So welcome everyone to part 2 of the ArcGIS Online Organizations for Schools. We do want to emphasize this is for schools. Things are a little bit different in higher ed. And my colleagues, Tom Baker and Kylie Donya, and I are going to be taking you through this section. And Kylie, if you're ready to roll, I'm ready to go through some slides.
I'm ready, but Tom's going to kick us off.
Ah, great.
Hey, Charlie just did, Kylie. Why don't you go ahead and hop in?
All right, well, let's jump to the first slide then. All right, so when you're talking about your org, there's a couple different phases you might be in while you're running it. So for those of you who are with us in the last hour, we talked a lot about how do you get going? Get ready, get set, go. This is the controlled scenario, right? And I picture, here's the goalie in his hockey rink. He's ready to go. We have nice, clean ice. It's calm. There are coaches beside him. We're doing everything right. But then things get underway, right? Suddenly there's a flying puck and there's skaters everywhere and you can't see clearly. And you got to still stay under control. So this session is going to look at that. In this second phase, when we're actually using the org and we're operating, what can we do to make sure we're doing this the best way? So the first of those is something that goes back to when you were setting up your org and you needed to do good, smart sharing. Right? You wanted to make sure that you didn't share everything publicly because that was too noisy, that you didn't keep everything private because maybe someone needed to see it, that you evaluated each piece of content, right? When you created it, you looked at how does it need to be shared? Who do I need to share it with? Or maybe the student was in a rush and just clicked the everyone button because it was easiest, or shared with 5 groups because they couldn't remember which group to use. Well, that's okay within a group. And hopefully for your student accounts, you actually limit their public sharing, but there are times they might need to share publicly. So one great way to control that sharing is to have a special account called a showcase account that's allowed to share publicly because it's run by a teacher. Student work, once it's ready to be shared, is moved over to that account so that that account is owning it and sharing it. This has a side effect of protecting the student's personal information. For those of you who were with us in the last hour, that's something we love to talk about. We don't want the information about these kids shared out. So instead, what you can do is take the content the kids are working on, let them get it ready, let them own it, work on it, maybe use groups to share it back and forth and give them feedback, have them modify it. But then when it's done, when it's ready for prime time, go ahead and switch it to the showcase account. The student will not be able to edit it any longer, but that's okay because you guys have said it's done and ready for the public. And then it will be safe, right? Safely shared. It won't have a student name on it. And they'll have that little bit of anonymous user to it so that it can be shared safely. And now this is actually, so when we say a showcase account, this isn't something special that's in your org. This is just another user account. Since you get quite a bundle of them with your org, you can dedicate one of them to being this showcase account. Now, often we'll name it similar to our usernames. We often recommend, like, as you saw before, student 001 dot and the start of your org URL. In this case, showcase dot and the start of your org URL. So it's something known and people know what they're getting into. Let's go on. All right, Tom, now it's your turn.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Or I'm going to try to share my screen. Here we go. Continue. Well, it looks like you'll get my full desktop. But can you see my browser at least?
You're good.
Wonderful. So one of the things we wanted to take a few moments and chat with you about are some of the ways that you can organize the content whether they be, say, along a thematic line or grade level lines, or maybe you just have a special project and you want to centralize the content that you or your students are creating to make it more efficient for learning. And part of that means that you need to pick and choose among the growing list of possibilities of resources that are included in ArcGIS Online today. On top of that, we also want to share with you just a couple of new developments that are in ArcGIS Online that we think might also help you streamline your school organization for student use. So I'm inside an organization. Actually, I'm inside one of our Esri organizations at K-12, but it's going to look for our purposes very similar to yours. I'm logged in as an administrator, and what I want to do is go over to my settings page. I've clicked on my organization tab at the very top, and I'll click on settings. One thing that was added, and I think it was just added this spring, it's under the general setting, and it's way down at the bottom of the page. But we now have the capacity to modify that navigation bar, and that's that bar that runs at the very top of your ArcGIS Online window. So for example, if there's something in it that just may not be relevant to your school or your students because of the way you use ArcGIS Online, you can either hide it completely or perhaps only hide it to those who are not logged in but are viewing your organization. It gives you the opportunity to turn off certain features, at least in terms of the navigation, to help better focus your students' attentions on the parts of the organization that most matter to you. So this is a cool little addition and very easy to do. Again, I'm logged in as admin. I go into settings in general and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and it allows me to modify that navigation. Something else that you should be aware of is that some time ago, Esri switched over to a new homepage for ArcGIS Online organizations. The cool thing about it is the new homepage template and tools are a lot more functional, and they let you do a lot more interesting things, tailoring, again, that content to student needs. So here, again, I'm in the settings for the organization, and I click on homepage, which is the second link down on the left, and I can launch this editor. Now, this is a homepage that Charlie manages, and I think he'd kill me if I mess it up. So I'm not going to make any changes today, but I want you to see the buttons in the interface and some of the functionality that you have access to modify in your own organization. And this tool in particular has been around for a while. So it is, I think this month or next month, becoming the default and replacing all the old homepage designs. So if you've not yet taken advantage of the cool functionality in the new homepage editor, I would definitely check this thing out, maybe even in the 15 minutes after the session, because it really opens up some doors. We can modify the header, we can customize the content blocks, and I said I wasn't going to do that, and I just went and did it. We can also modify the footer. We can also even preview what our page looks like depending on the type of browser, type of device rather, that we're using or expect to use most commonly. So this new homepage editor is very cool and certainly worth a deeper dive in thinking about how to organize content for your kids. Now, a lot of times we engage in focused project work, or maybe we have some thematic content that may not necessarily affect the entirety of the org. So we want to create a kind of a doorway, maybe a side door into our organization. It really just lets us look at a particular type of content. And there's a couple of different ways we can take advantage of this. Now, in our K-12 orgs, we all have access to story maps, and the story maps are incredibly powerful tools. And what I'm going to try to do here is, if my Zoom window doesn't get in my way, is I'm going to bounce over and take a look at my story maps page. All I've done from inside of my organization is click on my waffle button, and I scroll down and click story maps, and up pops my page here, where I can see, of course, my list of stories. And if you've not yet used story maps, and I hope everybody here has at least experimented with them, they're great ways of blending text, images, video, and maps. But one of the newer developments in the story maps arena is actually something called story map collections. I'm going to back up and I'm going to go to my left-hand nav here and click on collections. And what this is really designed to do is that if I have multiple different story maps that are showing different content, maybe student created content, I can use collections to organize those on a single page at a single URL. They're very easy to set up and very cool for students or anyone really to use to help focus attention on a subset of story maps. Maybe, for example, your students are tasked with reviewing 3 story maps as a part of an assignment, or maybe you have 6 different teams working inside of one classroom and each team has their own story maps. Well, those can all be centralized here through this collections panel. It's a very cool, simple tool to use, and it's available inside of that story maps area. Another tool, similar sort of to the story maps collection capacity, is back over here inside of our organization administration space. And as I scroll down, I will find something called open data. And this may seem a little off, a little bit of a misnomer, but if you turn on open data, it actually enables something for all of us that we might know by a different name called Hub, ArcGIS Hub. And with open data enabled, you can begin to create, or your students can begin to create with proper permissions and role types, you can create hub pages. And hubs, as you've already seen today, particularly in the plenary, you saw a Geo Inquiries Hub, you saw the Learn Hub. Hubs allow us to organize increasingly complex information, building out a microsite or building out a small website that includes multiple pages, navigation, as well as our maps, dashboards, can include links to forms, and so on and so forth. So hubs are a great way for capturing and representing, again, focused content similar to the story map collections. Now, the other tool that's at your disposal, another tool that is at your disposal, is the Experience Builder. And this tool is going to be ideal for jumping in and creating data-focused presentations or potentials for exploring data in a very rich, interactive, even expressive form. So if you're dealing with a data project, or students have been creating mounds of data and you really just want to keep them focused on the data, maybe it's analysis, maybe it's just discussion, maybe it's exploring it and thinking about next steps. The Experience Builder is another great way to focus your students based on the content that maybe they've been generating. Okay, so there are about 5 different ways to think about how to architect your site and some of the components in it to help focus and clarify your organization for student learning. Kylie?
Thanks, Tom. Charlie, do you want to stick up that next slide for us? Perfect. All right, so we talked a little bit about some of the stuff you can do to organize your content. Now we're going to change a little bit here, and we're going to look at managing the accounts. So in the first part, we talked about how you create these accounts, right? And we got some really good questions about managing these accounts. And now we're actually going to get into that a little bit. So with your accounts, one of the first things you need to do is kind of decide for yourself how you want to operate. You are the admin of your org, and so it is up to you the rules that your organization follows. For example, you could choose that even if someone's not at the school anymore, you want to leave their account existing and maybe disable it so that they can't still use it, but everything is there as it was. Maybe you want to delete those accounts. Maybe you want to be sure that only accounts that are actively used stay around. Well, what does actively used mean? Again, this is going to be up to you. Now we can give some recommendations. We often look at things like, when were people last logged in? Do they have any content? Those kinds of things. Maybe the views on their content. Like, is there any activity going on with the account? And maybe you want to look at a 2-year period. Maybe for your school, 1 year is good enough. So you need to kind of talk, maybe if you have multiple teachers working together among each other, and come up with some guidelines, or maybe your district has some guidelines on how it deals with accounts in other systems. But ultimately, you are the admin, and you'll choose what you need to disable, delete, ignore. So what I want to show you is some of the places you can go to make it easier to understand the accounts that you have. All right, so I'm going to steal the screen now. And share my own, and hopefully you are seeing that okay.
You're good.
Awesome, thanks, Charlie. So what you're looking at now is another organization, and this is one that is very similar to your school orgs that we use for teachers who want to learn more about GIS with us. So when I come in, I'm at home, and I've gone over to the organization tab. While in here, I'm starting on the overview, but right now, since we're looking at the accounts, whoops, I clicked it, which refreshes the page, doesn't do any harm, I'm still here. But we're talking about accounts right now. So you want to look at the members. That's where you're going to see all your account information. Now in here, there's a number of things you can do to help getting a sense of that examine part, right? So we're examining what accounts we have and how they're used. For example, maybe we want to look at last login, and we can see all these people who've never logged in. Well, we might want to consider what we're doing with their accounts if they've never even logged in. I can also see information over here about actions I can take, such as deleting the member right over here. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm going to do some things, but it's a little bit limited of a view. For example, it's hard for me to get much beyond these. So I want to show you another area that's going to let you dive a lot deeper. We're going to jump into the status tab. Now, this is a tab that actually a lot of people don't play with, and it can be very useful. You can see there's a number of tabs here and pieces of information, and we're going to come back to some of them in just a moment. Right now, we're talking about members, so you can see this area, and you can get some different reports on the user. There's my information, what I've been doing here. But the really cool thing in here is this word reports that I said a moment ago, getting some reports. Now you can come in and you can create a report, and you can choose what kind of report you want to make. They already know the types of information people need to get reports on for members, items, credit usage, activity. And they're set up so we can pick member, and you can give it a name, and you'll get a new report. Now, I've already done this just in the interest of time. Now, it did only take a few minutes to generate, so it's not like it was a big time stop, but I just didn't think we needed to watch a spinner today. So this is what you get when you do that. You end up getting a spreadsheet. And spreadsheets are fun, right? We all like data. So in a spreadsheet, I get a lot more control over maybe what I filter by, what I sort by, what I search for. So now let's see what information I have. I still have their names. I'm going to go, and I still have their username, and I have their emails, and I've kept those small because we don't need to look at them right now. And we have information about their types and roles, which is good. Oh, their credits. So we can see kind of the types of things they might have been doing. Are they high on credits, low on credits, and how many they're assigned, right? So we get a sense of what kind of percentage of their credits have they been going through. We also get last login dates, a lot more level of detail than we had in that other screen. And so here we can do more with the sorting on it. You can see the date the account was created, which is a little bit shrunk there. You can see information about if they have added on licenses and things. And we get to start getting a sense of the relationship between this account and this member and their content. Okay, so in this next, we're seeing how many items do they own? How many groups are they part of, or how many groups do they own? Right, so someone who has a lot of content might be more active. Now, it's not perfect, right? They might have been more active 5 years ago and not touched it. So you're going to have to use a number of the metrics together, right? You're going to combine that last login date with some of these other stats to start to flesh out a picture of this account and this user. All right, Charlie, if you can bring up our slides again. So the key there is that we're going into those reports. And that way we're going to be able to get that spreadsheet to see the details in that account. All right, and I want to jump back into the slides just to make sure I've gone over things. Oh, yes. I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I'll do that right here with the slide. You do, when you're choosing what to do with the accounts, you can choose to ignore and do nothing. You can choose to disable or delete, as I mentioned before. Now, when you do want to delete an account, you do need to remember that you are going to have to handle their licenses and you're going to have to handle their content. Now, content in particular is a tricky one. A license, if you unassign it, you could reassign later if they did need it again, or you needed to create another account for them. But their content, what do you want to do with that? When you delete content, it is gone. So one of our recommendations is having an archive account with a folder structure. Now, this archive account is very much like the showcase account I talked about earlier, in that it's just a regular account that we give a special name and we treat a special way. Archive dot whatever your fancy name is for your org, right? Your org URL. In that archive account, some people leave it as one big bucket and they only put things that were high value into it to store for later. Some people don't want to do that deep analysis of content and make a folder for every past student and move all of that student's content right into that folder. In that case, if a student did need something later, you could go into that folder and find it fairly easily, or the same with a teacher. So that's one recommendation there. And again, this is just a regular account that you're going to spin up and create a structure to help yourself manage that content or that account, right? Because right now they're so tied, right? The management of the account and the content. But right now we're making sure that we can take that account and get rid of all the content, because that's going to enable us to delete that account and get rid of it. And let's go ahead to number 4 now. And now is when we really get in, excuse me, to managing all that content. Now, much like you did with accounts, you need to examine, decide, and do. That's kind of the process when you're an admin. You have to do a lot of thinking about what your own regulations are, what your own processes are, and limits and guidelines. So with content, very similar to when you were looking at users, you need to think about what content is still needed. With content, you actually can also look at the sharing as one way of helping clean up. And we'll look at that same area in the reports in just a minute when I share my screen. And you can do things like keyword searches and use credit usage to help examine the content and understand what you have there, so that you can decide how to handle it and then do something. Because ultimately your goal here with all of this management is having a clean org, because then it's more functional. People can find what they need. People can get their jobs done and work well because the space is organized. Think of it like your desk, right? When your desk is really messy and papers are everywhere, it's harder to do your job, even if you know that one Post-it note is on there somewhere. So let's try to keep it a little bit organized. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and actually share my screen. Sorry about that. So let me steal it back from Charlie now. All right.
And you're live.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. So we're in that same reports page, but I'm going to back up a little bit. And in this status tab, I want to go back to the dashboard part of it. And I'm going to jump out to the credit area, because there's a couple things that we can explore in here to help better understand our content. So with our content, hopefully we'll get there in a moment. When this page does load, sorry, it's being a bit slow. My internet is having some issues, of course, because I'm presenting today. It does look at different types of storage that you have. So it looks at how much are you, oops, sorry, are we still on the number? It's just not switching for me. All right, so in the storage, you'll see things like how much storage is being used by a feature service versus file storage. Now, one reason that can matter is that storing things costs credits. Now, obviously in a K-12 org, we help you guys. We help you get more credits and all of that. You're not gonna have to stress about credits, but it's a good indicator to you about if something is using a lot of credits that is not of value, maybe you need to reevaluate it. And things like the feature storage, how many features they are, that costs credits. File storage, that's all your attachments that are attached to all those features. That costs credits at a different rate. So in this page, when it loads successfully, you're able to see some of that relationship between the pieces of content and how much they're using. Now in it, you get a nice table where you can look at some of the details. And fortunately, I did already grab the spreadsheet of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in there. The other report that I did, let me show you which one it was in here. The two that I find the most useful is the member and the items. So the items is the one we're going to look at here. So in our item report, we get a bunch of information, and we are going to have to scroll to the side here. So just bear with me. You get title information and you get item ID. The wonderful thing about getting that item ID is that that allows you to go to the page in ArcGIS Online and view the whole details of it if you want. You can just copy that ID and then put it into the URL. We get some information about the type, and we do get the date created as well as when it was last modified. Now, modified may or may not be important, right? Because something that's used all the time might have been created 5 years ago and never needed to be touched again, but still is being used a lot. So again, you're going to have to look at the content and think a little bit about, there's no silver bullet that's going to make the perfect list of what you can get rid of and what you need to keep. For one, because it depends on your org, right? It's your rules and your guidelines of how you want to organize your room. All right, we do also get over here view counts, which can be very important and help us deciding if something is popular and still needed. Does it get looked at a lot? If something has no views and it uses a lot of file storage or feature storage, it's probably a good candidate for looking at. So for example, I might want to filter on things like the size of the file storage or the size of the feature storage, and then sort based on view counts. So again, I'm using this just like data I might put on a map, right? We just don't have geography with this. And I'm looking at the different characteristics of it that help me understand what I need and I don't need. So some other things, just so we can see what we also have, it has some information about group sharing, some of the tags, the comments. So again, we can find out the owner here as well. And maybe we know certain owners and that they do use their content. And maybe we know other people tend to create a lot of duplicates and have a lot of things named test and maybe delete or demo or blah. You can go in as well, and you can actually do a search while you're in here and just do a keyword search within your organization. For example, you could search on test. How many things have the word test in it? Right now, when I do that search, I am able to restrict it to my org, and I can see there's a lot of items with the word test in it. Those are often a good case for things to clean up, especially if they're older, because they were tests, they were demos. All right, so Charlie, if you can pull that slide up for me again. And just to reiterate again, so accounts, content, both of them, we're doing kind of the same process here. We're going to examine, decide, and do. The details of that in part are determined by your org and how you operate. The deciding, the examining is the hard part, right? Finding the right information to make the choices. And so hopefully we've shown you some places to get more of that information. Deciding is a lot about your process. What did you decide that you want to do with the inactive user? What do you want to do with the content that's not used often? And then the doing is cleaning your room. And Charlie is going to share with us some tools that really help that part go a lot smoother.
Okay, so if you're ready for me to jump in and try some of this, there are a couple of ways of thinking about working with these. And first, I want to give you a sense of, you may have been looking at that organization and saying, this is a very weird org. It is indeed an unusual org. It's one that hundreds of teachers who have gone through our teacher education program and experience over the last decade have been using for a lot, and we use training logins and things like that. So it's an unusual org, and so we find some unusual problems that way. Yours is probably going to be a little bit more normal looking. But I'm going to be working with some tools that you can use inside your organization as well. One of these is by an Esri partner named GeoJob. And what they've created is a very, very powerful toolkit called the admin tools. And this is, I think, one of the most used elements from the ArcGIS marketplace, the admin tools. Now they have a standard version and a pro version, and the standard version is free. Everybody can get access to it. And that's what I point people to all the time. And I use it in all of the orgs that I'm a part of, where I'm an admin. And it's great for managing in bulk people, items, and groups. Now, what Kylie and Tom were showing you were some things that you can do inside the organization to make your life a little bit better, to make the organization a little bit cleaner, and literally to take care of some of the mess that accumulates, sort of like the mess on the porch that you don't really see after a while when you live in a place, or the mess in the closet, and so forth. What we want to do is to give you some tools that will help you discover patterns and then try to set some things up. Now, the process of working with this particular admin tools org, what I do is to create a group, an admin apps group in the org, and put the admins in it, and just the admins, because you have to have administrative privileges in order to use this tool. Then you need to go to the marketplace and get the app. And then to do that, you need to share the app inside, and it's a free app. The standard tool is a free app. You share that into your group. And then, as Kylie was talking about, explore carefully and test and plan, and then make some decisions and then do. This is not something where you want to do first and then say, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Working with the ArcGIS Online organization, there's not a lot of places where there's an oops. You can rename some things. Oh, that's not a great name. Bang. If you delete something, it's gone. There's no recycle bin where you can go and fetch it out of. So it's important to make sure that you're making these decisions carefully. And what I want to do is to go ahead and jump into the ArcGIS Online organization and walk through this a little bit. So here we are inside the T3T Org. This is that same sort of goofy org that you're looking at. We had a big staff that was running some institutes for a while, and now it's just so easy to do some of this stuff online. There's a lot that people can see and engage in online. So how do I access that ArcGIS Online Admin Tools app? I need to go to the marketplace, LMNO. Well, okay, I have it over here in some of my other places. Go into the marketplace, look for admin tools, and you'll find it. Add it in there. All right. So what does it look like once you've used it, once you've added it in? I'm going to look into my groups, and here's my exclamation point to make it come up to the very top, admin apps group. Yes, I want to jump into my admin apps group. Okay, I've got a couple of things in here. One is the ArcGIS Online Assistant. One is the admin tools. Great, I want to use the admin tools. So I'm now, just because I logged in as an admin and I had previously set up this tool as an item in the group, I can click it and it knows, here I am, I've got privileges inside this org. It knows, because that's the way it got set up, that I am logged in and ready to rock and roll in this. All right, now what can I do? I've got item tools, I've got group tools, and I've got user tools. What's this other one? This is for the people who jump into the pro version. There's some things that you can do there. But I've used the standard version for a lot of capacity, and I work with that. Now, some of this is replicated in a slightly different fashion from what Kylie was walking you through. If, for instance, I said I want to do a process about people, I want to explore the users. What can I do? These blue items, I can work on them. And great, I want to export all of the users inside this org to a CSV. How do I do that? Well, the first thing that this tool operates is tell me the universe that I need to be dealing with. Do I want to explore everyone? And right now I'm looking at 25 items per page. Give me 100 per page. And it says, okay, I got 7 pages. So I've got 606 results. Do you want to explore everyone? Okay, let's do that. Great, I've selected all 606 users. Now what? Next. What do you want to do with this, Charlie? Do you want absolutely every piece of information? No, no, no. You know what? I'm just going to clear everybody, and then I'm going to choose. I want their username. I want the first name and the last name. I think I want their role. I want to know the last login. The whole idea is to give you the capacity to make your decisions carefully and then say, okay, I think I'm ready to go to the next thing. I might say storage usage. That's really good. Yeah. And then I might look down here and say, gee, I may want to get a hold of them. Oh, here's their email. So inside my org, I can go through, set up a series of things that I want to do, go off and explore and say next. And it says, you're about to export these. And are you ready to go? And you can go ahead and export it. Then you get in and you've got a CSV, just like Kylie was walking you through. So this tool is a very powerful tool for doing that kind of work. And even just with the free standard tool, all of these blue things are powers that I have. I need to get into the pro version in order to do some of these other items. And inside the item tools, I have a lot of important things to look at. I can export items to CSV. I can update item owners. So I can say, ooh, these 3 people are moving out here. I need to change all of their content into over here. There are lots of ways of doing very powerful, important things. Ooh, I want to update bookmarks and thumbnails. I want to share specific items. Or in groups, I want to export the groups to a CSV, discover the ones that are not being used, figure out how many people are in each different group. Lots of things that you can work with here. So it's really important to get in and explore that. Now, I mentioned that there's another tool that you can go in and explore. What is that? This is this ArcGIS Online Admin Assistant. All right. I work with the admin assistant a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and sign out from this, and I'm going to go to, I need to open up a new browser tab. I'm going to go to my, what I really want to do is to view my bookmarks toolbar. Go ahead and always show that so that I can have my ArcGIS Online login here. I'm going to go log into one of my organizations. And when I'm inside this org, now you're going to see a very busy zone here. What I want to do is to move some content. I want to move some content to another org, to me in another org. What I did was to create a map out of a single layer of information. Let me take a look at this map. Let me see what this looks like. And just go ahead and open this up in Map Viewer Classic, see what it says. Yep, this is, there's, that's where I was born, I'm a native of Minnesota. And it has one layer that is this generalized layer. So I've saved a map. Now what I want to do is to copy this into another zone. How do I do that? I work with the ArcGIS Online Assistant. So AGO Assistant, and it says, oh, I see you're logged in. Am I logged in? All right, maybe I need to, yep. Oops, back up here, Charlie. You zigged when you should have zagged here. Let's log into the same. Yep, now I'm logged in. Great, what did I want to do? Inside the root level, aha, I see. I wanted to copy my generalized map and a layer over into another org. I'm going to copy some content. And is it into the same one? No, it's a different one. It's an ArcGIS Online. Go ahead. I'm going to log in. And it says, no, I want to sign in with a different account. I want to go into the T3T Org where I just was. That's where I want to copy content. Oh, okay. So now you can see on the left-hand side, here's my education resources. On the right-hand side, here I am inside of the T3T org. I want to copy this map, this Minnesota, no. Here's the map. There's the map. I just drag it over here and copy it. And you see how easy that was? It's copied. So can I, if I'm in my ArcGIS, in my T3T org, let me fire up a new private window and let me go in my new private window and say inside of Charlie, I've copied into my content. Come on. It's one of these issues of I'm projecting and I'm showing my screen and sharing my video and doing everything at once here, singing and dancing. I've copied into this content a map. So can I show that map? I didn't move it, I copied it. Let's see, let's open this in Map Viewer. Now, when I copied it, yep, Map Viewer's out of beta. Okay, don't need to know anything more about that. When I copied it, it says, wait a second, there's an error. The map is a recipe. I copied the recipe over, but I didn't copy the layer over. The recipe says, grab this base map. I would need to go back in and copy the layer over into my new org. And then I could go through and say, gee, I want to modify that org or that layer. Sorry, I want to modify the map to pay attention to the layer that I've just dropped into my second org to say, okay, use this layer, don't use the previous one. So these things, you kind of need to keep your wits about you in terms of where you are as you're working on these things. It's a little bit of a challenge to do all of this stuff and keep track of it. So that's why I tell people, make the decision. Don't just blindly say, I'm just going to copy everything over and carry all that stuff, kick the can down the road. It takes some work to move things. You don't move them. You copy them from one org to another. All right, let's see. Guys, do we have any? We're out of time here. Holy cow. Goodness. Well, what we wanted to do is to walk you through a whole series of things that you can, okay. Now, nope, I don't want my, all right, I'm gonna.
We've been addressing most of the questions as you've went along, Charlie. So
Great.
I don't think we're in too big of a deficit.
All right. So,
A couple at the very end that have been unaddressed.
all right. So let's see. I need to show not that one, but this one. We got to go in and do some managing content, and that's where we need to call it a day. Questions, you know how to reach us. Thank you. And now do we get to break until quarter after? I believe, are we at the time where now we get to break until quarter
Yes,
after?
I believe the next session begins at 11:15 Pacific.
Pacific,
So-
11:15. Terrific. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session.